I've been using Claude Desktop since it came out nearly 2 years ago, and I loved it. I had almost 1,800 chats, but I finally switched to Claude Code, and I can never go back. Not because I'm technical, I'm not actually a developer, but because Claude Code solves the one problem that made Claude Desktop unusable for real work: context limits. So here's what people don't know: Claude Desktop can connect tools and databases through MCPs, but as soon as you add more than 2 or 3, it breaks. You hit context limits, conversations reset, and it just becomes painful to use. And so Claude Code has 2 features that change everything: auto compact and agents. Auto compact means when you hit the context limit, it summarizes everything and continues the conversation automatically. You never have to start over. And agents mean complex tasks happen in a separate context window, such that you can do really context intensive things and then in a separate window, and then it will return with the answer. So this doesn't pollute your main thread. This is why I have 9 MCP servers, aka tools, running inside of Claude Code, and why my conversation has been going for weeks without stopping. This is why I can do real work without constantly hitting walls and having to re-explain myself. So I want to show you exactly how this works, right? The common misconception is that desktop can't connect tools. It can, but it just breaks, right? And so this is the MCP problem, right? So if we go over here, you can see that, let me go here. As soon as you connect to a couple MCPs, you just hit the context limit, right? So I kind of talked to you about the auto compact feature, and the biggest thing here is that you have agents, like I said, where maybe it will, you make a request. If you have a process that you've been running, it's really easy to build out these agents out of Claude Code. You just say, build me this agent, here's what I want it to do, and then boom, it spins it up for you. And then basically all you can think of an agent just as like a separate context window. You ask it, next time you ask it to do the same thing, it spins up a separate instance. It goes and maybe calls different tools, finds patterns, does whatever, and then it returns to the main chat so that you can get a lot done. And you can have agents going out and doing separate things for you, and then there's just one chat where you're kind of coordinating everything. I talk about this a lot on my videos, where the future of knowledge work, the future of work, is that you're going to be coordinating and orchestrating agents as opposed to doing everything yourself. Claude Code actually enables this because you can spin up these agents really fast. You can give them various different tools, and you can say, hey, go do this, go do that, and you're basically like in the driver's seat with one chat, but then it's going and it's doing all these things, right? And you can have multiple instances of it. Now the second thing, right, and I'll show you how this works, like we'll do a live demo here in a second, but the second thing is I give it access to my Notion database. It has all my content, my tasks, my notes, my quotes, there's all of this context. I basically engineered what is like the context that I'm giving Claude anyway, Claude Desktop, every time I start a new chat. And how do I just like put that in a Notion database? Now I've been taking notes for years. I think I have like 2,500 notes inside of Notion. But even if you're just getting started, this is really valuable, right? Because basically I can have all my notes, my tasks, content, and then Claude, if I have a certain agent that says, here's the notes agent, here's the content agent, and I'll show you how to set these up, super easy. Then I say like, hey, what should I do today, Claude? And it's like, going and finding your tasks, here's the urgent ones, here's when they're due, what is your energy level, let's plan out your day. It's able to plan out my day, it's able to research things for me, it's able to go and actually complete tasks for me because it understands the context about my life. I call it the Life OS. It understands who I am, the projects I'm working on, what my goals are, and the tasks that is required to complete those goals, and then all of the notes and context on my life, on the meetings. The meeting transcripts live inside of Notion. It's able to reference those and figure out how to solve things so that I don't have to like give it all of the context up front. So let's actually just go inside of Claude Code and I can show you some of these things, right? And so this is what Claude Code looks like. It might look a little intimidating because it's in the terminal, but you'll get used to it really fast. There's some solutions where you can actually run it inside like a separate app. There's an app called Warp that's pretty good. But I prefer actually the terminal. You get used to it faster than you think. All right, so let's dive right in here. Let's say I want it to run an agent. So you can see all these agents that I had it built. It's researching my Notion database, it's analyzing patterns in my voice notes, it's doing research about like content research. I have a lot of content systems in here, copywriting, research hooks, repurposing the content. But I wanted to show you how easy it is, right? So if we go inside of here and I click create new agent, I say project agent, generate with Claude, you can just tell it what you want it to do. So if you have a really long conversation, what I'll say is like, take everything you've learned from this conversation and write a comprehensive agent prompt that will take everything that we've done and turn it into a process that can be run, right? And that's basically what I did for all of these agents that I just showed you here, right? So let's say like the Notion research agent, I gave it access. It went and figured out how do I, pull information from Notion? Well, I have to structure the API call in this way, but like I wasn't telling it how to do that. It was just figuring it out on its own. Then I said, hey, based on everything you learn about how to about the different databases that I have in Notion, how to access information from them, how to search them, turn that into a process that becomes an agent. So now if I say, the research agent, so let's say I have the content research. Let's actually do create. So this is a content creation. And so if I say like, I typically on this channel create two types of content, tutorial and philosophical, like more abstract, this is what's happening in the world with AI. And then also here's how you do this thing. This is a tutorial one. But let's say I was like, and then here's like a voice to text mode that I have is a really cool tool called Monologue. But I'm just like, hey, all right, so Claude, I want to write a philosophical piece on AI safety. I've been thinking about AI safety and interacting and talking with some AI safety labs, and I've been realizing that there's some very real risks of AI, but there's also a path forward. And so I want you to find any quotes from books that I've read about AI safety. There's one from Eli Yudowski, and there's another one from John Vervaeke. So I want you to actually just go and find those quotes from my Notion, and let's create a piece of content around them. So let's get started. And you can see that when I tell it to do that, and you can see all the different examples of what it can do. But if I do that, it's going to be like, cool, all right, let me go spin up this agent. Let me search Notion. Let me do this. And it will understand exactly how to do that, right? So let's say I have a new task here. I can say like, use the copywriting agent to write a piece of content. This is a very vague thing, but you'll see that it has access to these sub-agents. And now the auto compact feature, let's say I go to one of these chats that's a little bit longer. Here's a chat that's a bit longer, right? You don't need to understand what's happening here, but you can see that it auto compacted, right? So here's the chat. And after it hits a certain amount, it's like conversation compacted. Use the history, right? But what it does is it created this file for me. So maybe I could say like, just to show you, can you output the auto compact file and show me what the compacted information was from this long conversation? So output the raw text for the compact file that you created. And so I just want to show you, I think this was one where I was trying to build out a system that like reverse engineers videos that are outliers on YouTube. But it's going to go and you'll be able to see like I think there's like hundreds of messages in this chat. It's probably like tens of millions of tokens worth of content. But you can see it like because it got long, it auto compacted, right? Boom, you can see here that generated automatically by the system. However, I can show you the summary at the beginning of the conversation. All right, so it looks like same difference. But it summarized itself and continued the conversation. You wanted to determine if 1 of 10 has an MCP, build the MCP tools for context research, document the process, show how the AI agent team works inside of Claude Code. And so we created these files. Here's all the errors and fixes. We solved this. Here's where we're at, the next steps. And so, you can see that it finished that conversation. It maxed out. And then it just like summarized it in this very succinct, 100 to 200 word summary that had all the context, and it was able to continue and understand perfectly what it was doing before, right? And this feature alone, like, will make you never go back to Claude Desktop. The fact that you can have a conversation and never max it out, never hit a limit. Now, depending on what plan you're on with Claude, you could hit the usage limit, like the amount of usage that resets after a certain amount of time, but you'll never hit a conversation limit. You'll never max out a conversation like Claude Code. If I show you, or Claude Desktop, if I show you Claude Desktop, you'll never run into this. Claude hit the maximum length for this conversation. Please start a new conversation to continue chatting with Claude. That's not a thing inside of Claude Code, right? And so if we try to run the same exact task inside of Claude Code versus Claude Desktop, Claude Code, blows it out of the water. And another interesting thing that I'll show you right now is, you can connect MCPs really easily. Here's the MCPs. I have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 MCPs set up. I actually had Claude set these up for me. So I said, like, Claude, does Slack have an MCP? Find it and set it up for me, right? I don't actually want it to set it up for me right now because it probably will say you already have that MCP set up. But it'll go out, it'll search for that MCP server. And it will, because Claude one cool thing that Claude Code can do is it can actually read the files on your computer. So you give it access to like a folder, right? You don't give it, some people give it access to their whole computer, but I just give it access to one folder, and then it can access all the files in that folder. And one of them is the MCP configuration file, which basically, for non-technical people, it means if you want to connect Slack, you have to connect the Slack MCP. But because there's the file, it knows how to configure it itself, right? So maybe it's like, hey, you need a key or you need to sign in or whatever. But it goes in here and it says, cool, can I download and install this in the configuration file? And can we actually let's just like set this up? And I just asked it and it set up all these MCPs for me, right? So I'm going to terminate that. You can see here we asked it to write a philosophical piece on AI safety, and then it's using the copywriting strategist agent. It did all of this, and now the way that I set it up is it's asking me questions, right? What's the central tension you want to explore? And so before it ever outputs anything, it's doing research, it's understanding copywriting, and then it's going and it's fetching all these pieces of information from my databases, right? So if I do Control O, you can see that it went through all of these pages in my Notion database, and it's actually, outputting these. So now if I show you Notion here, here's like some of the content that I'm creating right now. I had it like help me with that. But if I go into the Life operating system, here's the Readwise database. So let me just like open this up as a separate one. I also created a content intelligence vault, which I'll show you in a later video. But so here's all the books I'm reading. Think on These Things by Krishnamurti. If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. There's all these books. I've been saving these books in Notion for like 5 years, right? There's like a couple hundred books in here. But what it can do is it can go in and it can fetch this. So I asked it like, let's do one on AI safety. So maybe I just say like, just output all the quotes that you found. I'm curious to like read some quotes and have that jog my memory. So I'm just going to ask it that, but it will be able to pull these quotes. So like If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, it's a little bit of a cynical book about AI, but it's like cool, and it will output and it will find the relevant quotes from this book that are interesting, that it thinks are relevant. And you can do deep thinking, you can do deep like research with all the ideas that you've thought about. But then I can also say, hey, go out to the internet and find more information about this. Like, is there some research papers in the AI space that touch on these things? And it will go and find it. So not only am I having it read and fetch information from all of the Notion databases and tools that I use there, it's also going out and it's getting information from the internet. And then I'm having it go, and I built out content processes where it just like kind of runs the content process. It starts with the like title research agent, then the hook research agent, and then it goes out and it's the copywriting agent, and the copywriting agent then asks me a bunch of questions. It says like, is there any stories or anecdotes that you think would be relevant here? Is there any, maybe I say, go search my journal entries. There was one recently a voice note that I recorded about this a couple days ago. It will go find it, bring it into the conversation. So the goal here is not that it just writes all my content for me. It's that it prompts me. It asks me questions about what are you interested in? Are there any stories that relate to this? Are there any frameworks that you've thought about? Are there any books that you've read? Right? And I am like constructing this piece of content with it. And then only after like I've had this dialogue will it actually output the script. That way that it's like more authentic to me. And then I'll say like, analyze the transcripts of my voice notes and figure out how I speak. And a lot of times I'll just give it an outline. I'm like, let's just outline a video. Let's think through this ideas here. There's a really interesting idea when it comes to this. Pull it from this book, and you can see it just output all these quotes right now. This is a lot of quotes, but it's saying like, exactly, if I go here to Notion, if anyone builds it, everyone dies by Eliezer Yudkowsky. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Boom. In the past, I would have looked through Notion. I would have been like, oh, this is an interesting quote. I want to weave this into a story and like create a piece. And then the AI here just went and it's like, cool, here's the key quotes from this book. Copy and paste abilities in the current world. It takes 20 years or longer to grow a single human and transfer it. This is not the same with artificial intelligence. From the book Mentoring the Machines. It's also a fascinating book. Mentoring the Machines by John Vervaeke. They'll be able to see and experience the world. And so it's like this is a little bit more of a less cynical take on things. It's like, cool, here's all of your quotes from that. Here's all your quotes from this. And it's like these quotes, do you want to start building out a narrative? So now let's build out a piece of content related to this. And it's going to go and it's going to build this out with me, right? And this is the light bulb moment that I had, is that it's actually good to like have a dialogue with AI, but the problem is usually you're maxing out the context window. You're re-explaining the same context every single time. So what I'm trying to do is build out skills, or I have built out skills, like commands, agents inside of Claude Code, where I'm like, I've already like created content hundreds of times. There's a set process that I follow. Let me just like, hey AI, here's the set process. Anytime you want to create content, read all of these files and you'll understand what the process is. And part of the process is go and fetch information from Notion. Go and fetch information from my emails maybe. Go and fetch information from here. And so there's all these things that I would have been doing manually before. It's taking away all of the grunt work of going and retrieving and finding information. And then I'm left saying, let's create content. It does all these things. And then I'm just kind of like engaging with it and dialoguing with it in a way of like, oh yeah, I really like this angle, and what if we did this, and what if we added this story from my life into it, or what if we turned this into a framework, right? So the goal is like, I'm not trying to create viral content. I'm trying to use Claude Code to extract information out of me in a way that helps me think better, think more clearly, understand the vision, understand this without having to give it my personal context every single time, right? And so it's like, cool, here's question 1, and maybe I say like, this is the alignment problem is a relationship problem. Interesting. From like mentor to mentee, guidance or control. And it's like growing we're like growing a consciousness. Like that's the core thesis of mentoring machines. But you can see it says, all right, now I'm going through the planning phase, and now it's like, what is the shift in perspective that you had? And again, it's like prompting me. And so I'll create a whole separate video on this, but this is just a video of why Claude Code is better than Claude Desktop and why you need to switch. Because when you give it context about your life, when you give it these tools, Claude Code can actually retrieve relevant information. You can build workflows inside of it. You can build tools. I'll have videos showing you how to do every single one of these things. But for now, it's like just the fact that there's the auto compact feature. Download Claude Code, set it up, start experimenting with it for the sole purpose of being able to have a conversation with Claude without ever hitting a message limit. So I hope you found this valuable. I'm actually going to be publishing a lot of this on my newsletter called Thinking Machines. So you'll find the link in the description if you want more information on both kind of the philosophical angles and takes that I have on AI, as well as some of the more like tutorial, practical ways of using AI as a knowledge worker. So go subscribe to that. I have a community that you can join It teaches you how to use AI for business context. And I'm going to be building out inside of the community very soon, teaching people how to set up, creating like an entire process for how to set up this live operating system. I'll be creating videos on YouTube about it as well. But I'm trying to create a more like coherent system that people, you can onboard it rather than trying to patch together all these different things. But join the community, sign up to the newsletter for free. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it inspired you and showed you what's possible inside of Claude Code.